Ambassador Elias Vance stood at the tall window of the observation deck and watched the stars. Behind him, hundreds of aliens and humans filled the grand hall of Equinox Prime, a massive space station that floated between empires. Today was the day he had worked toward for 12 long years. Today, humanity would finally have peace. He was 53 years old, with gray hair at his temples and tired lines around his eyes. But those eyes still burned with purpose. He had given everything to reach this moment. His marriage had ended. He had missed his daughter growing up. He had survived 3 assassination attempts. All for this day. Ambassador Vance, a voice said behind him. They are ready for you. Elias turned to face his assistant, a young woman named Sarah Chen. She held a tablet computer and looked nervous. Everyone looked nervous today. How do I look? Elias asked. Like a man about to change history, Sarah said. Elias smiled and walked toward the grand hall. The doors opened, and sound hit him like a wave. Hundreds of voices speaking dozens of languages. Translators worked overtime as species that had never trusted each other gathered in one room. The Galactic Dominion had ruled most of the known galaxy for 10,000 years. 7 elder races controlled everything. They had technology that made human science look like children playing with toys. They had fleets of warships that could burn entire planets. And they had always seen humanity as insects, small, weak, and barely worth noticing. Humans had only discovered faster than light travel 300 years ago. In galactic terms, they were newborns. The Dominion had allowed them to exist only because human space contained valuable resources. But there had always been those among the elder races who wanted humanity destroyed. They called humans a disease, a plague that bred too fast and spread too far. Elias had spent his career proving them wrong. He had learned their languages, studied their cultures, and found common ground where none seemed to exist. Slowly, carefully, he had built bridges, and now those bridges would become the Galactic Concord, a peace treaty that would protect humanity for generations. He walked through the crowd, nodding to faces he knew. The insect-like cricks clicked their greeting. The tall, blue-skinned Valori bowed their heads. Even the aggressive Kethari, who served as the Dominion soldiers, stepped aside to let him pass. At the center of the hall stood a raised platform. On it sat 7 thrones, each holding a representative of the elder races. But one throne was larger than the others. One throne was made of black metal that seemed to drink in the light. Archon Zoreth sat upon that throne. He was Vethkai, the most powerful of the elder races. His body was humanoid but covered in scales the color of dark silver. His eyes were yellow with black slits, like a snake. 2 curved horns rose from his head. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. The human approaches, Zoreth said. His tone made the word human sound like an insult. Elias climbed the steps to the platform. He felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him. He felt the weight of 8 billion humans on Earth and billions more on colony worlds. They were all counting on him. Archon Zoreth, Elias said, bowing his head just enough to show respect but not submission. I thank you for this honor. Honor, Zoreth repeated. He seemed amused. You speak of honor, little human. Do you understand what you are asking? You want the Dominion to treat your kind as equals. You, who discovered fire while we were building empires across the stars. I ask only for peace, Elias said calmly. The Concord does not claim equality. It simply states that humanity has a right to exist, that our worlds will not be taken, that our people will not be enslaved. Surely, the Great Dominion can afford to give us that much. A murmur ran through the crowd. Elias had learned that the elder races responded to subtle challenges. They respected those who did not grovel. Zoreth stared at him for a long moment. Those yellow eyes seemed to look right through him, seeing every fear, every doubt. Then the Archon made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are bold, for an insect, Zoreth said. Very well. The Dominion accepts the Galactic Concord. Let it be known that humanity is under our protection. The words were spoken with contempt, but they were spoken. That was all that mattered. Elias signed the treaty with a steady hand. Representatives of all 7 elder races added their marks. When it was done, the hall erupted in applause. Humans cheered and cried. They had been so afraid for so long. Now they could finally breathe. But Elias noticed that Zoreth did not applaud. The Archon simply watched him with those cold, snake eyes. And in that gaze, Elias saw something that made his blood run cold. Patience. The Archon was patient. like a predator, waiting for the right moment to strike. Elias pushed the thought away. He had won. That was what mattered. 2 weeks later, he arrived at New Geneva, a human colony world on the frontier of their space. It was a beautiful planet of green forests and blue oceans. 3 million humans lived there, along with thousands of alien traders and visitors. It was proof that different species could live together in peace. His daughter met him at the spaceport. Commander Lyra Vance wore the uniform of Earth's military. She was 30 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn jaw. She did not smile when she saw him. "Father," she said. "Lyra." He reached out to hug her, but she stepped back. The distance between them hurt more than any insult Zorath could have given. "Congratulations on the treaty," she said. Her voice was flat. "The news channels talk about nothing else. Thank you. I hoped you might be proud." "I am." She paused. "But I'm also worried." They walked through the spaceport together. Crowds of people stopped to point at Elias. He was famous now, the man who saved humanity. He tried to ignore the attention. "What worries you?" he asked. "Dominion fleet movements," Lyra said. "I've been tracking them. Over the past month, they've moved 3 battle groups closer to our border. That's not normal. They're probably just repositioning after the treaty changes." "Father." Lyra stopped and faced him. "I've studied their patterns for 5 years. This isn't repositioning. This is positioning. Like they're getting ready for something." Elias sighed. "Lyra, I just spent 12 years convincing them to accept peace. They signed the treaty. It's done. Treaties are paper. Ships are real. You sound like the generals who wanted war. And you sound like a man who wants to believe his own story." Her eyes were fierce. "I hope you're right, Father. I hope the Dominion keeps their word. But hope isn't a strategy." She walked away, leaving him standing alone in the crowd. That night, Elias stood on the balcony of the human embassy. New Geneva's capital city sparkled below him. Families walked in parks. Children played in fountains. Somewhere, music was playing. Peace. This was what peace looked like. He thought about Lyra's warning. He thought about Zorath's cold eyes. He thought about all the species who had called humanity a disease. But then he looked at the families below. The children. The future. He had to believe in peace. Because if peace failed, those children would pay the price. Elias went to bed that night and dreamed of stars. In his dreams, they were burning. 3 months later, his nightmares would come true. The Festival of Unity had been Elias's idea, a celebration of the Galactic Concord, held 3 months after its signing. Humans and aliens would gather in New Geneva's central plaza to share food, music, and hope for the future. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Thousands of people filled the streets. Human children ran between the legs of tall Valori visitors. Krix merchants sold glowing crystals that chimed with beautiful music. Even a few Kethari soldiers walked among the crowd, their weapons put away for once. Elias stood on a stage at the center of the plaza. He was about to give a speech. Behind him, a massive screen showed the treaty he had signed, the document that promised safety to every human in the galaxy. "My friends," he began, his voice carried by speakers throughout the city. 3 months ago, many said peace was impossible. They said the Dominion would never accept us. They said we would always be afraid. The crowd listened in silence. "But look around you," Elias continued. "Look at what we have built. Different species, standing together, sharing this moment. This is what peace looks like. This is what we fought for." He never finished the speech. The first explosion came from above. A ball of fire fell from the sky and struck the eastern side of the city. The ground shook. People screamed. Then came another explosion, and another, and another. Elias looked up and saw death raining from the heavens. Dominion warships filled the sky. Dozens of them. Their weapons fired again and again, turning buildings into rubble. The beautiful sunset disappeared behind clouds of smoke and ash. "No," Elias whispered. "No, this cannot be happening." The crowd panicked. People ran in every direction, trampling each other in their terror. Alien visitors tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The warships were bombing the entire city. Then the landing craft arrived. They fell like metal tears from the bellies of the warships, hundreds of them. They crashed into streets and parks and rooftops. Their doors opened, and Kethari soldiers poured out. But these were not like the Kethari who had walked peacefully through the festival. These soldiers wore black armor. Their eyes glowed red with battle drugs. They carried plasma rifles that could cut a human in half, and they began to kill. Elias watched in horror as soldiers gunned down fleeing families. He saw a mother try to shield her children, only to be shot in the back. He saw an old man raise his hands in surrender, only to be executed where he stood. The Kethari were not taking prisoners. They were not showing mercy. They were exterminating. Someone grabbed his arm. He spun around and saw Lyra. Her uniform was torn, and blood ran down her face, but she was alive. "Father, we have to go," she shouted over the noise of explosions. "The people are dying, and you will die too if you stay here." She pulled him off the stage. "I have a bunker. Underground. Move." They ran through streets that had become hell. Bodies lay everywhere. Buildings burned. The screams of the dying mixed with the thunder of weapons fire. Elias saw things that would haunt him forever. A child crying over her mother's body. A man trying to hold his own intestines inside his stomach. A group of humans cornered against a wall, begging for mercy that never came. Lyra led him through an alley, then down a hidden staircase, then through a tunnel that Elias never knew existed. Finally, they reached a heavy metal door. Lyra entered a code, and the door swung open. Inside was a military bunker. Screens covered the walls, showing camera feeds from across the city. A dozen soldiers sat at computers, their faces pale with shock. "Commander on deck," someone called out. "Status report," Lyra demanded. A young lieutenant answered, his voice shaking. "It's not just New Geneva, Commander. We're getting reports from across human space. 17 colonies hit simultaneously. Earth's orbital defenses are engaged. Luna base is gone. Mars colony is burning." Elias felt the world spin around him. 17 colonies. That was millions of people. Millions of lives. "Why?" he asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Hollow. Broken. "We had a treaty. We had peace." Lyra turned to him. Her eyes were hard. The Dominion broadcast a message 30 minutes before the attack. They declared humanity a galactic infestation. They said, "We breed too fast and spread too far." They said we are a disease that must be cured. But the Concord was a lie, Father. It was always a lie. They used it to make us lower our guard, to find where our colonies were, to learn our weaknesses. She paused, and for a moment, her hard expression cracked. "I tried to warn you." Elias said nothing. What could he say? She was right. He had believed in peace so strongly that he had refused to see the truth. And now millions were dying because of his blindness. One of the screens flickered. A Dominion broadcast was cutting into all channels. Elias watched as a Kethari commander appeared on screen. Behind the commander, a group of humans knelt on the ground with their hands bound. Elias recognized them. They were junior diplomats from his own staff. Young men and women he had trained. People who had believed in peace because he taught them to. People of the galaxy. The Kethari commander said, "Watch what happens to those who support the human disease." One by one, the commander executed them. Plasma bolts to the back of the head. Quick, efficient, merciless. Each body fell forward into the dirt. The last one was Sarah Chen, the young woman who had told Elias he looked like a man about to change history. "Please," she begged, looking at the camera. "Ambassador Vance, please help us." The shot cut off her words forever. Elias fell to his knees. He had not cried in 30 years, but now tears streamed down his face. His chest felt like it was being crushed. He could not breathe. He could not think. Everything he had built, everything he had believed, all lies, all ashes. Above them, the bombing continued. New Geneva was dying. 3 million people trapped in a slaughterhouse. Lyra knelt beside her father. She did not comfort him. There was no comfort for this. "The Dominion has made their choice," she said quietly. "Now we must make ours." Elias looked at her. His tears had stopped, but something in his eyes had changed. The gentle diplomat was gone. In his place was something else. Something cold, something ancient, something that humans had carried in their blood since they first picked up stones and fought for survival in a hostile world. "They want to exterminate us," Elias said. His voice was calm now, terribly calm. "They think we are weak. They think we will run and hide and beg for mercy." He stood up slowly. His hands were no longer shaking. They are wrong. Lyra watched her father. She had seen him as a dreamer, a fool who believed too much in the goodness of others. But now she saw something different. She saw the reason why humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have ended them 1,000 times over. Humans did not know how to give up. When pushed, they pushed back. When hurt, they hurt back harder. When threatened with extinction, they became the most dangerous things in the universe. What do we do now? Lyra asked. Elias looked at the screens. At the burning cities. At the death toll that climbed higher every second. Now, he said, we teach them the mistake they have made. His voice was quiet. But in that quiet, there was the promise of storms to come. The galaxy had wanted war. Humanity would give them one they would never forget. 2 weeks after the massacre, the survivors gathered. The battleship Prometheus drifted in the darkness between stars, far from any Dominion patrol routes. It was one of Earth's secret weapons, a massive warship built in hidden shipyards, designed for a war that Elias had always prayed would never come. Now that war was here. The ship's main conference room was filled with the most powerful humans left alive. Admirals in crisp uniforms, generals with hard faces, scientists, spies, and politicians. All of them carried the same weight in their eyes. The weight of loss. The weight of survival. Elias sat at the head of the table. He had not slept in days. He had not eaten more than a few bites. But his mind was sharp. Sharper than it had ever been. Pain had burned away everything soft inside him. Admiral Catherine Shaw was the first to speak. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and scars from a dozen battles. She had always argued against the peace treaty. Now she did not seem happy to be proven right. The situation is worse than we thought, she said. Final casualty reports put the death toll at 47 million humans, 17 colonies destroyed or occupied. Our main fleet was hit while docked at Luna. We lost 60% of our warships in the first hour. Murmurs of despair ran through the room. What do we have left? Elias asked. 200 combat-capable ships. Maybe 300,000 ground troops. Scattered forces across surviving colonies. Shaw paused. The Dominion has over 10,000 warships, 50 million soldiers. Their fleet outnumbers us 50 to 1. General Marcus Cole slammed his fist on the table. He was a large man with a bald head and a temper that matched his size. Then we fight until we can't fight anymore. We take as many of them with us as we can. And then what? Shaw asked. We die nobly? Our species goes extinct? What else can we do? Run? Hide? They'll find us eventually. The room erupted in arguments. Some wanted to flee to the edges of the galaxy. Some wanted to surrender and hope for mercy. Some wanted to fight and die with honor. Elias listened to all of it. He let them argue until their voices grew tired. Then he stood up, and somehow, without raising his voice, he silenced them all. You are thinking like prey, he said. The room went quiet. You count their ships and our ships, their soldiers and our soldiers. You do the math and decide we are already dead. Elias walked slowly around the table. But war is not math. War is will. War is endurance. War is the refusal to accept defeat. He stopped beside a screen that showed a map of the galaxy. The Dominion's territory covered most of it, a vast empire of 1,000 worlds. Human space was a tiny corner, barely visible. The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years. Elias continued. They have never faced a real challenge. Their enemies surrender or die quickly. They have forgotten what it means to fight something that won't give up. We're not stronger than them, Cole said. We're not smarter. We don't have better technology. No. But we have something they don't understand. Elias turned to face them. Do you know what humans are? Our ancestors were hunters, but we were not fast like the cheetah. We were not strong like the bear. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. He paused, letting the words sink in. So how did we survive? How did we become the dominant species on Earth? His eyes were cold fire. We hunted by following. We chased our prey for hours, for days. We never stopped. We never rested. The prey would run fast and escape us. But we kept coming. Eventually the prey collapsed from exhaustion. And we were still there. Still walking. Still coming. Shaw leaned forward. Persistence predators. Yes, that is what humans are. We don't need to be stronger. We just need to refuse to die. Elias looked at each face around the table. The Dominion expects us to break. They expect us to surrender or scatter. They have never faced an enemy that just keeps fighting, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. So what do you propose? Shaw asked. Elias returned to the head of the table. He pressed a button, and the screen changed. It showed Dominion supply routes, patrol patterns, communication networks. We don't fight their war. We fight our war. We don't meet their fleets in open battle. We strike their supply lines. We attack their fuel depots. We vanish before they can respond and strike again somewhere else. Guerrilla warfare, Cole said. On a galactic scale. More than that. We turn their own subjects against them. Elias changed the display. It showed information on dozens of species living under Dominion rule. The Dominion has conquered hundreds of worlds. Billions of aliens live as slaves or second-class citizens. They are not loyal to the Empire. They are afraid of it. We give them reason to hope. We give them weapons. We give them the chance to fight back. A spy named Victor Reyes spoke up. He was thin and pale, the kind of man who lived in shadows. You're talking about starting rebellions across the Empire. That will take years. Yes, it will. And during those years, we will bleed them. We will exhaust them. We will make them afraid to sleep because they don't know where we'll strike next. Elias's voice dropped low. They wanted to exterminate us because we spread too fast and breed too quickly. We will show them why that terrifies them. We will be everywhere. We will be their nightmares given form. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Shaw spoke. You're not just talking about winning a war. You're talking about bringing down their entire empire. Yes, that's impossible. Elias smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. 47 million of our people are dead. My staff was executed on live broadcast. Children were gunned down in the streets while celebrating peace. His smile faded. There is nothing they can do to us that they haven't already done. And that makes us free. Free to fight without limit. Free to sacrifice without hesitation. Free to be patient, because we know that one day, we will stand in the ruins of everything they built. He looked around the table one final time. The Dominion thinks they know fury. They think they understand hatred, but they have never met a human with nothing left to lose. They have never faced a species that hunted mammoths and survived ice ages and crawled out of the ashes of nuclear fire. They made a mistake when they attacked us, and I will spend the rest of my life making them pay for it. No one argued. No one objected. Something had changed in the room. Despair had transformed into something else. Something darker and stronger. Admiral Shaw stood up first. What do you need from us? Everything. Every ship. Every soldier. Every scientist and spy and engineer. Elias paused. And I need authority. No committees. No debates. One voice to command the war effort. It was an enormous request. It would make him a dictator in all but name. Shaw looked at the others. One by one, they nodded. Very well, she said. From this moment forward, you are wartime consul. All military and civilian resources are under your command. Elias accepted the title without celebration. This was not a victory. It was the beginning of a long, bloody road. Then let's begin, he said. We have an empire to destroy. The lights in the conference room seemed to burn a little brighter. The humans around the table sat a little straighter. They had come to this meeting as beaten survivors. They left as something far more dangerous. The Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to exterminate humanity. Instead, they had united them, focused them, turned billions of individuals into a single weapon aimed at the heart of the Empire. The hunters were awake, and they would not stop until the hunt was finished. The war lasted 2 years. 2 years of blood and fire and death. The Dominion expected it to last 2 weeks. In the beginning, the Empire was confident. Their admirals laughed at human resistance. A few hundred ships against 10,000? It was a joke. They sent fleets to crush the remaining human worlds, expecting quick surrender. They did not find surrender. They found traps. Human ships would appear near a Dominion supply convoy. They would strike hard and fast, destroying fuel tankers and cargo vessels. Then, before the warships could respond, they would vanish into the void. When the Dominion sent fleets to chase them, they would find nothing. Meanwhile, another human force would be attacking a different target on the other side of the Empire. The humans were ghosts. They were shadows with weapons. Admiral Shaw commanded the fleet operations. She had spent her career preparing for this kind of war. Her ships never stayed in one place for more than a few hours. They used hidden bases in asteroid fields and abandoned systems. They struck at night cycles, when Dominion crews were tired. They targeted supply lines instead of warships. Within 6 months, the Dominion was facing shortages. Their fleet needed fuel. Their soldiers needed food. Their factories needed raw materials. And the humans were bleeding them dry, one convoy at a time. But Elias knew that this was not enough. The Dominion was too large to defeat through raids alone. They needed allies. He found them among the conquered. The Morveth were a species of engineers who had been enslaved by the Dominion 500 years ago. They built the Empire's ships and maintained their stations. But they were treated as property. Elias sent secret messages to their leaders. He promised them freedom. He promised them weapons. He promised that when the Dominion fell, the Morveth would rule themselves. The first Morveth sabotage was small. A shipyard that suffered mysterious power failures. A weapons factory where machines broke down for no reason. But soon, the sabotage spread. Dominion warships would launch with faulty engines. Communication arrays would fail at critical moments. The Empire was being eaten from the inside. The Valori were next. They were one of the 7 elder races. But they had grown tired of Dominion brutality. Elias met with their High Council in secret. He did not beg for help. He did not promise rewards. He simply showed them what humanity was doing to the Empire. We cannot win alone, Elias told them. But we can create chaos. We can weaken them. The question is, will you be slaves forever? Or will you fight for something better? The Valori joined the war 3 months later. Their defection shocked the galaxy. An elder race, turning against the Dominion. It had never happened before, but it was not the last time. As human victories mounted, others grew brave. The Krix stopped paying tribute. The Thessari provided intelligence. Even some Kethari unit soldiers who had seen too much death refused orders to massacre civilians. The Dominion was cracking. But they were far from broken. Archon Zorath responded with increased brutality. He ordered the destruction of any world that showed sympathy to humans. He executed Dominion officers who failed to stop human raids. He broadcast videos of captured human soldiers being tortured to death. You see, he declared to the galaxy, the humans are weak. They hide and run like vermin. They will never defeat us. They will die screaming, like all pests die. Elias watched those broadcasts. He watched his people suffer. Each death carved another piece from his soul. But he did not waver. He had made himself into something new. Not a diplomat, not a peacemaker, a weapon. He planned operations personally. He studied Dominion tactics until he could predict their movements. He sent soldiers on missions that he knew some would not survive. He made choices that would have horrified the man he used to be. And when the moment came, he was willing to do what needed to be done. The Dominion had a ruling council of 7 archons, one from each elder race. They controlled the Empire's military and economy. Killing them would not end the war, but it would create chaos. Elias led the mission himself. It was a strike team of 50 humans, the best soldiers humanity had left. They infiltrated a Dominion space station where 3 council members were meeting. They fought through hundreds of guards. Half the team died in the corridors. Elias killed 16 enemies himself. The man who had once refused to touch a weapon now moved through combat, like water through cracks. He had trained for this. He had prepared. He had become the monster that the Dominion had created. They reached the council chamber as the 3 archons tried to flee. Elias caught them at the door. One was Vethkai, like Zorath. Ancient, proud, cruel. He looked at Elias with disgust. You are the human diplomat, he said. The one who begged us for peace. I did not beg, Elias said. I offered. You chose war instead. And you think killing us will save your species? The Dominion will hunt you forever. Your worlds will burn. Your children will. Elias shot him in the head. The Archon fell without another word. The second council member tried to fight. Elias shot him too. The third was older than the others. She was Valori. Though she had opposed her people's defection, she did not try to run. She simply looked at Elias with tired eyes. I was against the attack on humanity, she said. I voted no. Does that matter? Elias hesitated. For a moment, The old diplomat stirred inside him. Mercy, compassion, the belief that not all enemies were evil. Then he thought of Sarah Chen begging for her life before the camera. He thought of children gunned down in the streets of New Geneva. It might have mattered once, he said. Before he pulled the trigger, the team escaped the station as it exploded behind them. They had lost 28 soldiers, but 3 council members were dead, and the Dominion was reeling. Zorith's response was immediate. He executed 1,000 human prisoners. He burned 2 more colony worlds. He screamed his rage across every channel in the galaxy, but his rage did not stop the war. It only made humans fight harder. 1 year became 2. The Dominion threw fleet after fleet at human forces, but they could never pin them down. More species rebelled. More worlds defected. The Empire was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. Elias was not the same man who had signed the treaty on Equinox Prime. That man had died on New Geneva. In his place was someone harder, colder, more dangerous. He had ordered strikes that killed innocent aliens who served the Dominion. He had sent friends on suicide missions. He had become the very thing he once hated, but he had also kept humanity alive. Lyra found him one night, sitting alone in his quarters aboard the Prometheus. He was staring at a hologram of New Geneva, the city as it had been before the attack. "We're winning," she said. "Reports say the Dominion is pulling forces back to protect their core worlds." "I know." She sat beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Are you all right, Father?" Elias laughed. It was a hollow sound. "No, I don't think I will ever be all right again." He turned off the hologram. "I've done terrible things, Lyra, things I never thought I was capable of. You kept us alive. At what cost?" He looked at his hands, the hands that had signed peace treaties, the hands that had killed counselors and soldiers and anyone who stood in his way. "Sometimes I don't recognize myself anymore." Lyra took his hand. "The man who signed that treaty believed the galaxy was good. The man sitting here knows the truth. The galaxy is harsh and cruel and full of monsters." She squeezed his fingers. "You became what we needed to survive. That's not a crime. That's sacrifice." Elias did not answer, but he held her hand, and for a moment, he felt something other than cold determination. Tomorrow, the war would continue. Tomorrow, more would die. Tomorrow, he would make more impossible choices. But tonight, he sat with his daughter and remembered what it felt like to be human. The end was coming. He could feel it, one way or another. This would be finished soon. The Dominion's capital world was called Throne. It was a planet of black towers and golden spires, where the elder races had ruled for 10,000 years. No enemy had ever touched its surface. No invader had ever reached its skies. Until now, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 200 warships, accompanied by 300 vessels from rebel species. Behind them came transport ships carrying 500,000 soldiers from a dozen different worlds. It was not the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen, but it was the most dangerous. Every ship had survived 2 years of impossible war. Every soldier had lost someone to the Dominion. They had not come to conquer. They had come to end an empire. Admiral Shaw's voice crackled across all channels. "All ships, this is Admiral Shaw. You know why we're here. You know what they did to us. Today, we finish this. For Earth, for New Geneva, for everyone we've lost. Attack." The battle was brutal. Dominion defense platforms opened fire, destroying dozens of ships in the first seconds. Cathari fighters swarmed like angry insects. The remaining loyal fleets of the Empire threw themselves at the invaders with desperate fury. But the humans had learned patience. They had learned tactics. They had learned to work with their new allies. Valori cruisers drew fire while human destroyers flanked the enemy. Morvith engineers disabled defense stations from within. Thasari scouts fed real-time intelligence to the command ships. Hour by hour, the Dominion defenses crumbled. Elias watched from the bridge of the Prometheus. He was not a military commander. He left the battle to Shaw and her admirals. His job would come later. "Father." Lyra stood beside him in full combat armor. She would be leading the ground assault. "The orbital guns are down. Landing zones are clear. Then go," Elias said. "I'll be right behind you." Lyra hesitated. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something more. Then she simply nodded and ran for the shuttle bay. The invasion of Throne was chaos. Cathari soldiers fought for every street, every building, every room. They were defending their master's capital, and they would not surrender easily. Human soldiers died by the hundreds, but they kept pushing forward. They had been told that this was the end. Win here, and the war was over. Lose here, and everything had been for nothing. They did not plan to lose. Elias landed with the second wave. He wore light armor and carried a plasma pistol. He was not a soldier, but he had become something close to one. More importantly, he needed to be there. He needed to see this through to the end. The fighting took 3 days. 3 days of street warfare, close combat, and endless death. The beautiful towers of Throne became ruins. The golden spires fell one by one. On the third day, human forces breached the Obsidian Palace. It was the seat of Dominion power, where Archon Zorath had ruled for 3 centuries. Its walls were thick enough to stop orbital bombardment. Its guards were the elite of the Kethari warrior caste. They died like all the others. Elias walked through corridors littered with bodies. Human soldiers cleared rooms ahead of him. Behind him came a camera drone, broadcasting everything to the galaxy. He wanted everyone to see this. Every species, every world, every corner of the Empire. He wanted them to see what happened to those who tried to exterminate humanity. They found Zorath in his throne room. The Archon sat upon his black metal throne, surrounded by the bodies of his last defenders. He was wounded. His silver scales were cracked and leaking dark blood, but his yellow eyes still burned with hatred. "The human diplomat," Zorath said. His voice was weaker than before, but still carried contempt. "Come to gloat?" No." Elias walked forward slowly. Human soldiers kept their weapons trained on the Archon. "I came to end this." Zorath laughed. It became a cough. "You think this ends anything? You have destroyed my empire, yes. But you have created 1,000 enemies. Species who were loyal to us will never forgive you. The galaxy will burn for centuries because of what you have done. Maybe." Elias stopped a few feet from the throne. "But we'll be there to put out the fires. We'll rebuild what you destroyed. We'll prove that there's a better way than conquest and fear." Pretty words from a man with blood on his hands. Zorath leaned forward. "I know what you've done, Diplomat. The assassinations, the civilians caught in your attacks, the allies you sacrificed for victory. You're no better than me." Elias considered the accusation. The old version of himself would have been horrified by the comparison. The man he was now simply accepted it. "You may be right," he said. "I've become something I never wanted to be. I've done things I can never undo." He drew his pistol. "But there's one difference between us. I didn't start this war. You did. You could have had peace. You could have shared the galaxy. Instead, you chose extermination. Everything that followed is on your head." Zorath's eyes narrowed. "So you'll execute me? In front of the whole galaxy? That will make you a hero? No. It will make me a murderer." Elias aimed the pistol. "I accepted that a long time ago." "Wait." Zorath raised a claw. "I can give you information. Secrets of the Empire, hidden weapons, hidden bases. I can help you." "You can't give me anything I want," Elias said quietly. "You can't give me back the people you killed. You can't give me back my staff, or the children of New Geneva, or the 47 million who died in your first attack." He pulled the trigger. The Archon's body slumped on its throne. The leader of the Dominion, the tyrant who had ruled 1,000 worlds, was dead. The camera drones broadcast the image across the galaxy. The war was over. In the months that followed, Elias oversaw the dismantling of the Dominion. There were no mass executions, no revenge massacres. Humanity had not fought to become what they defeated. Instead, there were tribunals. The architects of the genocide were tried and punished. Some were executed. Others spent the rest of their lives in prison. But ordinary soldiers, ordinary citizens who had simply followed orders, they were given the chance to build something new. The Dominion shattered into dozens of independent states. Species that had been conquered were given their freedom. A new galactic compact was formed, with humanity as one of its founding members. Elias refused to lead it. He had done what was necessary in wartime. But peacetime needed better leaders. Leaders who remembered how to hope. He returned to New Geneva. The city had been rebuilt. New towers rose where old ones had fallen. Parks covered the mass graves. 3 million people had died here, but now 3 million more had come to take their place. At the center of the city stood a memorial. A wall of black stone stretched for kilometers, carved with the names of every human who died in the war. 47 million names. It took days to walk the entire length. Elias stood before the wall on a quiet morning. He found the section where his staff was remembered. Sarah Chen, David Park, Maria Santos, all the young diplomats who had believed in peace because he taught them to. He had not cried since that night in the bunker. But now, finally, the tears came. He stood there for hours. Visitors came and went. Some recognized him. Some nodded in respect. But no one disturbed him. Everyone understood that some grief was too private for interruption. Lyra found him as the sun was setting. She stood beside him in silence for a long moment. She was a general now, decorated and respected. The war had made her hard, but it had not broken her. Was it worth it? She asked finally. Elias touched the stone. He felt the weight of every name. I shattered their empire, he said. I made them pay for what they did. We survived. We're even stronger than before. He paused. But I'd trade it all to bring back even one of these names. Lyra took his hand. That's what makes you different from them. Zorith would never have said that. Elias turned away from the wall. The sun was setting over the rebuilt city. Children played in the parks. Families walked together. Alien visitors from former Dominion worlds mingled with humans, learning to trust each other. Never let them forget, he said to his daughter. Not just what was done to us, but what we're capable of. The kindness we can show when we're at peace. The fury we become when that peace is broken. He looked at her with tired eyes. Both of those things are true. Both of those things are human. Lyra nodded. I'll remember. They walked away together, leaving the memorial behind. The galaxy remembered the war. They remembered the massacres and the battles and the fall of the Dominion. They remembered the human diplomat who became a destroyer of empires. But most of all, they remembered the lesson. Humanity preferred peace. They reached out with open hands and hoped for friendship. They built bridges and signed treaties and dreamed of a galaxy where all species could thrive. But if you burned those bridges, if you slaughtered the innocent and tried to exterminate the species that only wanted to coexist, then humanity would answer. And their answer would be fury. The stars had learned to fear the quiet ones. The species that smiled and talked and believed in better futures. Because behind those smiles was the memory of ice ages survived, of predators hunted to extinction, of a world conquered through sheer stubborn refusal to die. Humanity was kind. Humanity was gentle. Humanity was hopeful. And humanity was the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever known. The memorial stood in New Geneva, names carved in stone, a reminder of the cost and the resolve. And above it, the stars continued to burn, watched now by a species that would never again be caught unprepared. The peace held. But everyone remembered why.